By nurturing compassion in people, we can get them to think about everything, other people, the food system, animals, the planet. But we got to get people to care. And right now, we are in a world where we're doing just the opposite.
Ikigai. Do you know what that means? Today on Designing the Business, I'm speaking with Miyoko Schinner, and we are examining what her Ikigai is. We're going to talk about that. What is Ikigai? But this is a fascinating conversation. It's not just about business because we're talking about food and the systems that create the food that we use, eat to live the kind of life that we want. I love this conversation. Miyoko is very forthcoming about how she views the systems and what she wants to do about it. Even though, she is doing plenty, so much. I'm such an admirer. This really is a podcast where we explore what it really means to build a business with purpose. And we can see it with Miyoko and how she has built a business and how she continues to create the kind of life that she wants that allows her to thrive. I'm Risha Walden, founder of Walden Interiors and a vegan interior designer. This show is dedicated to conversations with founders, creators, and leaders who are building successful businesses and success in very many different ways, but successful in that it aligns with their values. So we talk about mission, integrity, growth, and the real decisions behind running a business that does good for people, for animals, for the planet. So whether you're a business owner or creative professional or someone who believes your work should reflect who you are, you're in the right place. Let's design the business intentionally. Miyoko, thanks so much. I'm going to start with, you're doing a bunch of different things. And I'd love to, you just talk about the different threads of businesses that you are following and developing.
Gee, okay. The different threads of businesses. I don't really know that I'm thinking about any of them as businesses.
All right.
So I think this chapter in my life, having been an entrepreneur for most of my life and having had
Yeah.
lots of businesses, I think what is really driving me is really trying to figure out what I'm here for the rest of my life, however long I have. At this point, I think we all begin to wonder what's the rest of our life looking like. And, is it just the great wind down or is there anything more we can contribute? And, you were in Japan with me. We were just there. And one word that you probably are very familiar with is ikigai, or that sense of purpose, or the reason that the thing that gets you up in the morning because you have a drive, the thing that you live for, which there is really no direct translation in English. But I guess I'm really trying to figure out what had been my ikigai up until now, because I've always been a very motivated, driven person trying to achieve something. And now that I am, in my late 60s and I have grandkids and all that, and I'm forcibly having to shift my life. I still have to earn an income because of the way things fell out. I'm not, quote unquote set, if you want to put, in that sense. But at the same time, I am trying to figure out, what is the next thing that is going to get me up in the morning and give me a sense of purpose? And is there a role for me where I can give to the world? Because I see more connection than ever as we become more and more disassociated through technology. At the same time, I see more and more the need for us to connect in a deeper way and for each of us to play the role in the greater world community, whatever that looks like. In your life, maybe it's bringing beauty to people, aesthetic beauty. In my life, what is it? Is it showing just people how to cook or how to reclaim the food system in their own kitchens? Like, what is it? But I am trying to figure out, however many years I have left on this planet, I want to put it to good use, and I want to do it in a way that benefits as many people as possible. And I'm not sure I can put my finger on what that thing is. I mean, I'm doing a lot of things.
You are. Oh my
I mean,
goodness. Like for
so,
somebody who
I-
doesn't have an ikigai, and like
yeah, I mean,
you had like when on our trip you talked about I'm doing this and that and that. You're not one to just sort of say, okay, I'm gonna play pickleball and sip cocktails in the afternoon. Like that is not
Definitely,
your
definitely cannot no, I cannot live with my if I were to I've never done pickleball, I don't even know how it's played, so there you go. I do know someone who plays pickleball every day, however. So, I know someone who plays pickleball, but I don't know how to
okay.
play pickleball. No, I mean, I am still I feel like I'm back in my 20s trying to navigate what I wanna do with my life. And so I'm back I feel like I'm back at square one, and I'm trying a lot of stuff, yeah, so I'm leading these vegan culinary tours. You went on one in Japan.
And I have to say it was fabulous. Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm so blessed to have been able to do that and see Japan from that vegan point of view too, because while I believe that Japan has a very robust vegan culture, I think it's really been diminished and, we're not
It
going to be
has.
talking so much
Yes. Yeah.
with the influx of Western culture and food.
Yes. No, no, absolutely. Is a topic that I'm incredibly passionate about. In fact, it could be I think it is a big part of my ikigai because, I'm teaching at UC Berkeley Haas School of Business in a food systems class, trying to envision what would a future food system look like that
Mm,
would be sustainable for people, planet, and animals.
right.
And is that a future based on plants? And how would that look from various perspectives, from social justice, animal welfare, environment, all of that stuff, economics. But at the same time, this has given me a much bigger perspective of the entire food system and how in such a short span of time, literally in a matter of decades, not even 100 years, we got to where we are today, where there is Western dominance throughout most of the world in how the rest of the world eats. And this is a major problem that basically a few 100 million people, countries that only, total population of, if you add up just the United States, we're talking 350 million people. The way we eat is impacting 7.5 billion people. Now, how is it such a small percentage can impact the rest of the world? And it's really, really kind of frightening that if the rest of the world follows the footpath of the United States, the future doesn't bode well for the planet, for people, or for animals at the rate that we are destroying biodiversity, the lives of billions of animals on a regular basis, human health. It all plays into the scenario of how do we make the most money we can from the food system. And that is what's driving it, not how do we feed people in a way that nourishes them and maintains their communities and their culture and the biodiversity on the planet and the health of animals and all of this. So I think for me, just really being deeply involved in making some sort of food system shift is maybe at the core of my ikigai, but how that takes shape in terms of, how it manifests in terms of the role I play in the world, or whether it's a business or it's legislation or advocacy or whatever, I'm not quite sure yet. So,
Right, because you are doing advocacy too. And, that's sort of like a business. You're doing the advocacy you talked about in Bhutan, right? Do you
yes.
want to talk a little bit about that?
So, about a year ago, I was reached out by a monastery in Bhutan, just of all through Veg Voyages, actually. And this monastery has gone completely vegan, and they're trying to veganize Bhutan, which is a Buddhist country and I guess historically was largely vegan, but over the years, just like Japan, they've begun to consume more and more meat. Now, the interesting thing is that it's illegal in Bhutan to slaughter an animal. And therefore, at this time, there are no slaughterhouses. Although they eat animals, they just don't slaughter them. They import them mostly from India.
Crazy.
Which
Crazy.
is, really kind of a contradiction. So I guess the legislatures there has, the parliament there has decided, well, this doesn't make any sense. Let's just build our own slaughterhouse. I mean, we're eating meat anyway. And so this monastery wants to put an end to that. They want to veganize the country before this legislation goes into effect. So I put together a change.org petition to plead the government not to create the slaughterhouse because yes, they eat meat in Bhutan and they also eat cheese, but and that's where I come in actually was they didn't reach out to me to put together a petition. They reached out to me to create vegan cheeses because they use cheese in their cooking. So they have a cheese called Dotsie, which I'd never heard of. I had to Google it, and there's very little information on Dotsie, by the way, because only a very tiny percentage of the world's population eats it. But it's a very simply made cheese, and they add it to soup, to curries, and things like that, and it kind of melts into the curry and gives it a creamy consistency. And so that's why they reached out to me and I started working with them. And this is all, I'm just doing this because I want to support. It's this form of advocacy. It's not a job or anything like that. And I'm, trying to make all these cheeses and I watched one YouTube video, the only one I could find on Dotsie to see how it's made. And
Wow.
it was interesting. Anyway, so I'm talking to them and they're like, "Oh no, we can't get cashews. They're too expensive. We can't get this ingredient. We can't get that ingredient." Finally, I just said, "Okay, what can you get?" And it's like, "We can get soy. We can get soybeans." That's so, when you're working with another country and you honor their tradition, rather than going in like, Nestle did, dumping milk in all these Asian countries where they had no history of drinking milk, like Vietnam. When you try to respect the culture of another culture, you have to listen to what do they have available? What are they normally used to eating? So they do have soy that is available. And so I had to limit myself to just making cheese out of soy milk. And I was able to get a really wonderful, eventually, this really great cheese that they were very happy with. And I'm hoping to go there later this year if I can get my flights to work out. But anyway, in the meantime, the slaughterhouse thing came, so I put together a petition. If maybe you can
We can
upload.
definitely post it. We'll definitely post it below so that anybody who is
We're at
interested
over
in
9,000 signatures worldwide. I'm trying to get to 10,000. I need to do that in short order. Anyway, so yeah, that's that. It's just one of those, one little activity. I have a lot of these
right.
little things.
Well, that's the thing is that you're not just doing one little thing. It's like leads to bigger and bigger things, and maybe it's not a business, but it is sort of a business of changing the food systems.
It really is. I mean, that is fundamental to everybody. I mean, it really impacts everybody. I think in America, we really underestimate what's going on in the food system. We don't know. We're kept in the dark. And we think we're, we have the most freedom ever, the most choice ever in the food system. And we think back, oh, 100 years ago, you had to grow everything yourself and to look at this, look at us now. We can just go to the supermarket and buy whatever we want, and we don't realize that it's really sort of not true because what's on the shelf is largely controlled by about 10 multinational corporations. And it looks like thousands of brands, but they're all owned by the same companies. And, they kind of decide what you eat by what they sell. And it's very hard, having been an entrepreneur, having been in the food business and knowing hundreds of other entrepreneurs and people trying to create new businesses, whether it's smallholder farmers, anything from just beans to some fancy product. It is so hard to get on shelf. It is so hard to get your product in the store unless you can raise a ton of money and you can get big right away.
Mm,
The food system is not designed for a bunch of small businesses because it's all about streamlining and efficiency. And so if you can just carry a handful of products, look at the plant-based section. If you go back 10, 15 years ago, we had one corner of the supermarket and it kept getting bigger. And we thought, oh my God, within 10 years, we're going to take over the entire corner of the supermarket. And we haven't. It stopped. It's still that same amount of shelf space. And you see the same brands over and over and over again. I can tell you there's probably about 100 vegan cheese companies in the United States. 100 vegan cheese companies.
yeah.
You see 100 different brands on shelf. You see 3 or 4 max, and that's by design, and those other 96, 97 companies or there's probably more by now, will will have to struggle trying to sell their products online or whatever. And I've talked to so many of them, and they're all struggling just to sell products because they can't get on shelf.
So it's a marketing. Is it a marketing problem or is it a distribution problem then?
It's mostly distribution. Well, it's actually both. It's distribution and shelf space. That shelf space is costly.
Okay.
Stores don't wanna buy from individual producers anymore, they wanna buy from one distributor, and it wants to be streamlined, and that one distributor wants to carry one cheese product that they can sell to 30,000 stores. So, if you're a small vegan cheese company that can only produce enough for 200 stores, you're not gonna get picked up by that distributor because it's just not efficient for them. It's not cost effective for them. So we have designed a system where unless you can get big, you will fail. You cannot survive as a small business anymore, especially with private equity going in and just buying up everybody and everything. We are designing a system where, of monopolies again, of a handful of companies basically getting all the loot and everyone else struggling. So that's the scene we live in. And I don't know if I want my food choices being governed by this type of system that determines that scale is best.
So we're seeing that in the United States, and I know that you look around the world. Are you seeing that same food system being adopted around the world,
Well,
or
I
is
can't.
it just,
Yeah.
what do you see?
Yeah, I think, yes and no. I mean, we were in Japan and we moved around from region to region, and we found successful companies producing soy sauce in small batches,
Mhm.
probably just for their area. Same thing with miso, same thing with sake. So whether it's Japan or Italy, which are the 2 countries that I'm most familiar with, there are so many regional companies that are still thriving, that are family owned, that have been generating income and supporting local communities for decades or hundreds of years. All those companies in the United States are gone.
Yeah. I mean, that's in the mindset too of people in, the Japanese and the Italians, where it's about that connection to not just the food, but also to the people who are making the food,
Exactly.
right?
Yes, there's a story behind the food. There's a
Yeah.
story behind the product. There's a somebody behind it who cares about the product and that's doing it with love and artistry. I mean, just like you with your decor, you're putting your artistry, your heart behind it to
Mhm.
help your customers. Producers in the old days made their olive oil, their soy sauce, their miso, their whatever, their vegetables, and they put their passion and heart into it because it was a reflection of who they were. And that's not what there's no person involved. I mean, I was flat out told when I was removed from my company, I was told the company is bigger than you now. You are no longer needed because it's not about you. In other words,
Fascinating.
what they were saying was, "We don't need a person behind it anymore. It's not important. It's just an entity on its own." And
Yeah.
that's important in some ways for an entity to survive, unless if for it to get to a certain size, yeah, you need other people who can sustain it and look at it as a business. But when you take the heart and soul out of any business, out of any food product, then you're just another brand on shelf with no
Yeah.
principles, no passion, and you can't feel the love in the food, it becomes meaningless. And that's what we're becoming in this country is we're becoming a country that makes products that have no soul. And it's to me very, very sad that we've gotten to that point.
We do have a history, a culture of farm to table. I mean, that's what we call it now. But people are signing on to that and they're interested in that. And yet that isn't really the case of what is happening, is it? In
No,
here
I
in
mean,
this
well, farm
country?
to table is a really, really nice movement for those who can afford it and live in certain areas. So, we're talking about 0.1% of the population or something. Most people don't have access to farm fresh produce. A lot of people who live in certain urban neighborhoods don't even have access to a grocery store. There's a liquor store where they can get canned veggies or something. So, it is definitely not on an even playing field here in the United States. We have basically bred our way out of a local and regional food system. The thing about the way places like Japan and Italy operate in that they have these regional or local producers and farmers that provide their communities is that those companies will never be big. They will always be small to
Mm,
mid-sized companies, and their food systems will be fairly local. If you go to a grocery store in some of the areas where we were, you're not going to find all this produce from across the world and all these other products. You're going to find mostly fairly regional Japanese products. And you know
right.
what? That's okay. What is wrong with staying small and local and regional? Well, what's wrong from an American perspective is that someone is going to fail to make a ton of money off of it. That's what it
Yeah.
boils down to. It has nothing to do with whether or not these small producers are feeding their communities and people are enjoying the fruits of their labor and the love that they can feel in it and the high quality. Sometimes these farmers or these producers have so much pride in what they make. I mean, it
Yeah.
just blows you away when you go to a winery in Italy or olive oil place in Italy or soy sauce manufacturer in Japan, and there's so much pride in the way they do things, and we've been doing it this way for, 2 centuries or whatever, and they're so passionate. I mean, you've seen the passion as somebody explains how a product is made in Japan or some other place. There's no passion in a producer here in the United States. You think you go to Nabisco and they're gonna talk with pride about how, it's gonna be like last year, we churned out this much product and our revenues grew by. I mean, that's the bottom line, is food is another pathway to making money for a handful of people. It is no longer about feeding people. It's no longer about nourishing people. It's no longer about nutrients or flavor or quality or it being a basic human right. It's literally about what will give the most opportunity to a handful of people to make another killing. And I don't think food should be in that ballgame. If you want to make a killing with, I don't care, perfume, something completely unnecessary, go ahead,
Right.
scale. But food should be a basic human right, and every human being on this planet should have equal access to food, not just the 0.1% who live in Napa or Sonoma County or upstate New
Right.
York and has access to a farmer's market. I mean, it just isn't right.
Yeah. So how how do you ensure, or how did you ensure that your business stayed aligned with ethics as it grew and evolved? What we're talking about, Miyoko's Creamery, when you started that, you were growing and like and keeping it aligned with your ethics and your values, and then, how do you do that and continue to?
Well, that's a really great and important question, and I can tell you if I were to do it again, if I were to start the same business, I would structure it differently.
Okay.
But at the time, kind of like really trying to figure out how do you create a business in this capitalist environment, I don't think I was as focused on that. Supply chain was really important to me. So I would go and visit the suppliers. Like I flew to Vietnam to really understand where the cashews, which is our main ingredients, came from. Who were the farmers? How were they processed? Were they paid well? So all of this stuff, I did that. So we did that with all of our supply chain. We really tried to trace it down to where the sourcing and all of that. I also wanted to take care of our employees, so we paid a so-called living wage for for our area. Plus, we had a cafeteria where meals were served all day long for free, especially since we had a no animal products on premises rule. So I wanted to make sure that everyone, especially if you're a production worker and you're taking, I don't know, a bus to get there. And, you have to get up early in the morning. Maybe you don't have time to pack a lunch and you're being
Right.
asked to work an 8-hour day. So I just wanted to provide nourishing food for everyone. and it was just wonderful. People loved the lunches that we had.
Wow.
Breakfast and lunch, you could, depending on what time.
Wow.
Some
Yeah.
people ate there 3 times a day. I mean, because that's what they needed to do. I mean, we also
Right.
had some unhoused employees. I know that was where they ate, at least, the 5 days that they worked. So, that is how I tried to structure the business. Now, it was still a corporation. We were also a B Corp, and we also were a public benefit corporation, which means that you have to that's the type of corporation we were, which meant that you have to exist for more than just profit to the shareholders. Things changed, obviously. I think what I've learned is that a public benefit corporation doesn't mean anything as long as there's private equity or venture capital involved. They're still going to watch out for their backs more than anything else. Unfortunately, there was a lot of less. It sounded good to me.
Right.
Today, if I were to start another business, a food business like that, I would only start a cooperative. It would be a co-op,
Right.
horizontal leadership, so worker-owned co-op, and so there's a nonprofit organization called Project Equity that talks all about that, and I've been learning about how co-ops work. I would only sell to regional, local, and independent retailers and co-ops. I would not sell to the Walmarts and the Targets of the world. No
Right.
matter if they came knocking and said, "We want your product," I wouldn't sell to them. Partly because there's it's a non-level playing field in that there is actually a law called the Robinson-Patman Act, which prevents producers from charging different prices to different retailers.
Okay.
But that started getting ignored under the Reagan administration, so that basically, Walmart is paying a lot less for your product
Right.
than your local grocery store is.
And
And
the
that's why
reason for that,
is because the Walt Robinson Patman Act is not being enforced
right.
because Walmart has greater buying power
Right. Okay.
and they can basically make up the rules. So
Right.
they end up getting from the distributor, they end up buying, they get for example, a distributor sells to Whole Foods, they mark it up 7%. A distributor sells to the mom and pop grocery store, they mark it up by 40%. And that's supposed to be illegal, only it's not because they've finagled these loopholes to make it possible.
Right.
So this means that mom and pop retailers go out of business because they can't compete as Walmart moves into the area or Target or Whole Foods. And so we're losing really the fabric of what defined our communities, which are the small farmers, the small producers, the mom and pop grocery stores where they knew every customer. We're losing that community touch, and everything is becoming a faceless, anonymous exchange of just soulless products.
Right. I think that it sounds to me it's also part and parcel because we are losing our connection to the products because we're losing our connection to nature and and to the source of where things come from. Like more and more processed goods, you wouldn't even be able to tell what is it. The more processed it is, the less you
And we
recognize
think
what it
that's
is.
normal. I mean, we have a
Right.
whole generation of people growing up thinking that's how you make food,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
And the other people in other parts of the world think we're crazy. I'm not kidding. It's not just politics.
Work.
It's true. I mean, people look at the
Yes.
food system and they go, "What the hell are you
Yeah.
guys eating?"
Yeah.
I mean, it's not normal. The way Americans eat is not normal.
Right. So why do you think it's being adopted then by other cultures? Because I can see it, I travel a lot and, they're adopting those,
They are, but
you know.
not to the extent you might think. I mean, like,
Okay.
I was in this little village in Italy a few years ago, for about a week, and there was one little tiny grocery store down the street where you could get your provisions, and they had nothing but Italian products. I mean,
Wow.
just, eh, vegetables, olive oil, pasta, tomatoes. I mean, you couldn't get any, I don't know, box of Nabisco cookies or whatever. They just didn't it
Right.
just wasn't there. On the other
Right.
hand, I got a shipment from South Africa. Somebody sent me a gift and these little ceramics they had made, and everything was wrapped in newspaper. And I opened it up because they wrapped them in the food advertising pages of the newspaper.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was so interesting to see what was sold in South Africa. And it was basically what you'd find in a grocery store in the United States. All this
Wow.
processed crap.
Yeah.
You know, it is because if you're eating a diet that's based on, well, okay, I think I'll give you the best story. When I was 7 years old, I moved to the United States with my mother, and we lived in Mill Valley, and there was a little corner grocery store, Bill's Grocery Store. And she and we walked down there and we walked in, and all of a sudden, there was this whole rack of candy with pixie sticks and Hostess Twinkies and all this stuff. And my mother and I were, we had stars in our eyes. We were like, "Oh my God, what is all this stuff?"
Right.
Because we had never seen anything like this in Japan in the late 1950s, early 1960s. It
Mm,
just didn't exist, you know?
right.
I mean, to us, to me, the snack was, ishiaki imo, the sweet potato, the coal roasted sweet potato. The man would come by with his truck, with his coal laden cart selling hot sweet potatoes buried in coal. And that was like the ice cream truck.
Right.
That was my memory. And instead we come to the United States and all of a sudden there's Hostess Twinkies and Pixie Sticks and all this crap. And we thought it was like magic. And
Right.
so if you're living in a country eating predominantly farm fresh vegetables and beans and, whatever, a chicken occasionally that your grandmother kills, all of a sudden there's these, magical Fruit Loops and things that come. Why wouldn't you be mesmerized? And we've done a really great job of marketing this crap in other countries. When I was in Vietnam, one of the things that bothered me the most was this giant billboard that I saw that of Nestle talking about something about bringing good dairy goodness to the starving people of Vietnam or something. It didn't say starving, but and they're pushing dairy on a population that has no history of consuming dairy products. And now every Vietnamese thinks you need to have dairy. Same thing happened in Japan after World War II. So, the Americans occupied Japan. And in 1954, Japan passed the School Lunch Act. And because Japan was suffering from the recovery after World War II, the aftermath of World War II, and there was widespread malnutrition. And it wasn't because they didn't have dairy, it was because there just wasn't enough food, period. They just needed to get back to where they were before World War II, before their houses were bombed and infrastructures destroyed. And yet the Americans convinced them that they needed dairy. And along with the School Lunch Act, dairy was on it. And by early 1960s, every school in Japan was serving milk.
They're so interesting, really. I mean, it's like a web, right? And it's unraveling that web. Where is this and how did we get there? And I find it very interesting, actually. What it's interesting because you're saying your ikigai, you started that at the podcast at the beginning
Yeah.
of our interview, and yet I can hear it like throughout all our conversation.
Yeah. No, I think it is. I mean, food has always been my area of passion. I am just trying to figure out how do I manifest that into something that, into a form. I don't want to just talk about it on a podcast.
Yeah,
I need to take action somehow, and I'm just not
right.
sure what that is. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, you are taking action. It's interesting because you are teaching, you're leading tours.
Hmm.
Even on a podcast, my belief is that everything change only starts, from us, from where you are exactly,
Yes.
and then it's all these ripples that like expand from us, and that's how you make change. Like
Mm-hmm.
just in however you contact whomever. Like yes, we like to have bigger change, and you're a doer, and you're a visionary, and so it's like okay, I want to get bigger and bigger and change the world, but I see it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. No, I'm just trying to figure out what the next step is. I feel like I'm doing lots of little things, but they're all disparate things. They're not all connected. And I'm looking for that one thing that I can really throw myself into. I don't know, full time, but a big chunk of my time.
Right.
And it's so anyway, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Yes, it'll have something to do with food because this is the thing that really, gets me up in the morning. I mean, it makes me so angry. I wish I could tell CEO, I met the CEO of Nestle one time, Nestle,
Oh, right.
and I wish I could tell him to his face, what they're doing to the world and how they're ruining it. I just want to call
Right.
these guys out on it.
So, the impact that you hope your work has on people and animals and the planet is what kind of impact do you think that is?
I think if everyone in the world could live without the fear of, and I think most people live in fear of not being able to make enough money, fear of not having enough food, fear of not having housing or love or anything else. But if we could somehow create a world where everyone had the things that they needed just to survive, we could help create more caring and compassion in them. Most people are so worried about themselves, they have very little left to give to somebody else or to another animal. And if we don't nurture compassion in people, I think by nurturing compassion in people, we can get them to think about everything, other people, the food system, animals, the planet. But we got to get people to care. And right now, we are in a world where we're doing just the opposite. We are in a political system here in the United States that is basically inculcating division, hatred, anger, intolerance, and fear. So people live their lives afraid that if they don't take it all, they're going to lose it. And we will never, ever be able to take care of animals, people, or the planet if we can't operate from a place of abundance and compassion. So, the food system thing for me is a part of, I mean, it'll all resolve if we can create humanity a human race that is based on compassion. In other words, a humane race. And we have a
Right.
long ways to go to get there.
So you want to change that mindset, change it
Yes.
from scarcity too. I mean, it's scarcity. Fear is
Yes.
scarcity.
Yes.
And, the world has so much abundance. We know that businesses thrive on scarcity. There's only so
Yes.
much. You better get it. You better get it now, right? But is that really what the world is about? And it's not. Like when you go, even if you go to a farm, it's abundant. The growth is abundant.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
fact, 30% of it rots in the fields. It never gets, because it's just
Right.
inefficient. And so,
Right.
in fact, there is this in the vegan community, you have probably heard that, and not just even the vegan community, there is this problem that we don't have enough protein to feed 10 billion people. And that's
Yeah.
why we have to invent novel new proteins.
Right.
And we have to figure out how to feed 10 billion people. The reality is we already produce enough protein and calories to feed 10 billion people. We
Yeah.
actually produce more. It's
Correct.
just that we're growing the wrong kinds of foods and they're not distributed. So it is completely false to say we got to figure out how to make more food. We don't. We already know how. But you
Right.
know what? There's no money involved in discovering the foods that we already make, like beans.
Right.
If we had every farmer grow beans and every household decided to eat a lot of beans, we could feed a lot of people for not a lot of land or money. The
Yes.
farmers would make money, we'd all get plenty of protein and calories, and we would be able to put nitrogen back into the soil. But guess what? No private equity person is going to make money off of that.
Off of beans.
Yes, unless you're Rancho Gordo, and that's about it. One
Yeah. No, it's really true, and it's funny as you're talking about this, it's really a lot of Unfortunately, marketing to make you
Yes.
believe that there isn't enough land, there isn't enough, there we're not gonna be able to do it, and that's why, and it falls into that whole thing about using pesticides and fertilizers and GMOs to create our food system, but none of that is true. We don't need them, and we've seen it played out in places like India with the farmers and,
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
right? And with even within our own country with farmers and, them taking on GMOs and
We have destroyed the livelihood of literally millions of farmers around the world, especially since the advent of GMOs. We really have. Literally millions of farmer suicides. It is, you know, in India particularly, but here also in the United States, Mexico, Africa. It is really, really horrific. And somebody's getting rich off of it.
yeah. And so it's going back to what we do know, because we've done that. We've been there. Like maybe me not personally, but I know us as a human race, we have created an abundant farming system, an abundance with plant goods and plant life, like to create
Yes.
to feed this world, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So what do you believe needs to change for it to truly align? Like, is it is it the people or is it the corporations? Like, what would have to change?
We would need to have to take power away from the corporations. And the only way that can happen is through, I see, a grassroots revolution that involves thousands of small businesses deciding to say no. And consumers. It has to be an alignment between consumers and businesses saying, we're only going to sell to these companies, we're only going to sell locally. We're going to create local regional economies. We need consumers to support that. And we unfortunately need to, people think, oh, I can only afford to shop at Walmart because they're cheap. Well, th- you know, it- local grocery stores were very affordable before Walmart came in and changed the pricing scheme. And so we need to reclaim that. And we need a system where more people, this is my one of my favorite sayings, more people can make a living and fewer people make a killing. We don't have to make a killing. We have to just be satisfied making a living. And we need to spread that wealth so that more people can make a living.
Well, I know that one thing that I stopped doing was buying from Amazon because if
Thank
I love vegan cheese, so I'm like, okay, what are the cheeses and going directly to those websites to support those
Mhm.
smaller industries, smaller companies versus going to Amazon. And it's like Amazon is like Walmart where they get a bigger cut, they charge less for the product, which means that the cheesemaker makes less, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Ultimately. Yeah.
Ultimately. And that's how Amazon it's very expensive to be on the Amazon
Right.
platform.
Right.
So, yeah, no, I mean, I stopped shopping on Amazon too. I don't shop at Whole Foods anymore, Target, Walmart. I just stopped shopping at all these mass market retailers and, do most of my shopping at local grocery stores.
Yeah. Well, so if you were, what would you tell your younger self for someone starting out? Like, about building a business that aligns with this value or their values, what would you say to them?
I don't know that my younger self would have really understood it. I mean, I think my younger self never really understood how making money as the goal. I guess what I would say is listen to your gut because I never really the idea of being in a business in order to make money never sat well with me. It always seemed really strange. The idea I remember when I first after Miyoko's had really taken off, one investor said to me, "You're gonna be a really rich lady someday." And when he said that, I was really alarmed because it made me very uncomfortable because there was a question in my head's like, is it really right for me to become rich because of a business? I mean, it just a business making food. It in some way, it
Right.
didn't seem and anyway, it didn't happen because, I was kicked out and then the company tanked and all of that. So, I didn't sell
Not
the
feeling
company.
sorry for them.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, we're not feeling sorry for them at all. Um, but I probably should have listened to my gut in the very beginning, which was to figure out what does it really truly mean to be an ethical business? And playing the capitalist game in the capitalist system, which at the time seemed to me like the only way I could get a business off the ground, just wasn't right. And I would probably refocus and think, okay, how can I do it in a way that truly does align with my values? How can I make a living and,
Do the things that you love,
things that I
and
love
you were
and give
creating
back to
this
my
connect
community. Yeah.
right, and you were creating a beautiful community, not just within the company, but, everybody connected that, I know that when I bought Miyoko's Creamery products, I felt connected to that company because I loved what you guys were doing. It wasn't just producing cheese, or dairy non-dairy products, but you had, lots of different initiatives that you were doing that I aligned with.
Yes. Anyway, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
tried, but I
You
would
did
do it.
great.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Seriously, really. It's inspiring because it's like you say, I actually think most people are not don't I think there is a group of people who work for money, but I think most people are motivated by other things.
I
And
agree. I agree. But unfortunately, those that work for money are the ones,
making
you
the
know,
money.
making the money and controlling things. When someone says it's just business, that's the problem because that means heart and personality and people really quality really don't matter. It's just business. So,
Well, Miyoko, this is really interesting. I love our conversation. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to spend with me and talk about what you're doing and your values and ethics. So, where can people find you or support the work that you're doing?
my website is just my name, miyokoschinner.com, MIYOKOSCHINNER.com. You can follow me. I'm not super active on social media, but at Miyoko Schinner on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And then, my other thing I didn't mention is the Farmed Animal Sanctuary and Youth Education Program. I started Rancho Compasión. So you can go
Okay.
to our website, Rancho Compasión, 501(c)(3) nonprofit. And yeah, we try to nurture compassion in about 700 kids a year that come through the program. So
I love it. I
yeah,
love it. And we'll put all those links below.
great.
So anybody who's interested in learning more, please go and support Miyoko and the work that she does, even though she says she's not doing anything. And she just happens to be doing a few things that she forgot to mention. But thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Risha. Bye bye.